Why are you looking at me?
We both
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I can start. Welcome to the Hmong Women podcast. Like, subscribe, and follow us for more content. My name is Emily.
I'm Ariel.
And I'm Dochi.
And today we're going to be talking about what it means to build a healthy relationship with food, especially in the context of the Hmong community. So we've got a few things to talk about today. Firstly, we want to talk about what our relationship with food was growing up.
I can start this off. So I had to think really hard about this question because I don't think I've ever thought about it before. So off the bat, I was like, okay, definitely confusing. And it was not the greatest. Eating, as I remembered it, has always been associated with my looks instead of being associated with just my general health and having nutrition, right? It's always been if you eat too much, you're too big, or if you're not eating enough, you're too small. And you know what? Sometimes people eat a lot and they're still really small, vice versa. And so when I think about it, it's always been this very confusing thing, and it's a comfort for me. So it's more, that I think that's all I got about that. Very confusing.
I have a lot of horrible childhood memories of food. I mean, most of it was good, but I had like 3 main memories come up. And it wasn't all bad or good, but these are just the things that stuck out. One of the things was being told to finish all my food no matter how full we were. So, yeah, I feel like a lot of people experience that too, of where our families told us that, you know, there's people starving here in America, or there's people starving in Africa. And it makes it feel like we're more obligated to eat more and to finish and sit there until we were done. And essentially, this pretty much just led me to overeating and ignoring my body's cues. So I stopped listening to it because I was like constantly being forced to just sit there and finish my entire plate. And fun fact, it actually takes 20 to 30 minutes for your brain to register that you're full. So that says a lot in terms of like being more conscious of what you eat and the food you put in your body.
I think my interactions and relationship with food growing up is complicated. Because we grew up sometimes without food, like we would struggle to have food. And then when we were farming, we had food because we were farming. And so there's that aspect of my relationship with food is like, there is food insecurity, but then there's also knowing that we had food at times. Like I remember growing up, there wasn't food in the house and I was just dipping rice into salt to eat. And that's because like my parents were always working and like they didn't qualify for like food assistance programs. And so like sometimes there'd be days where we didn't have enough food, and then there are days where we would. In regards to like my emotional relationship with food, I was taught the same thing is like you need to finish your food because there are people who don't have food, and you need to be appreciative of your food. But I also grew up with Dochi, right, where I was always a chubby kid, and so it was always you're eating too much. You shouldn't be eating that much. And I was always taught this is good food versus this is bad food. And we know that that doesn't work, right? That leads you to binge eating and overeating. And so I was always taught like, you just need to eat vegetables because like meat and chips and all these other things are bad. Just even one bite is bad. And so then that led me to when I could afford to, I would eat all the food that I was not allowed to eat as a kid. And so I had a really bad relationship with food growing up. And even as an adult now, in the past couple of years, I've really learned to work on my relationship with food. But that's how it was for our home life. It was interesting and complicated.
Yeah, and actually I wanted to add to that too. It reminded me of when I was younger, like my elders, my parents, they didn't necessarily say that we had to finish our food because there were people out there who didn't have any. But I remember them saying like, like it's wasteful. I was like, well, I didn't tell you to give me this big old bowl. Like I'm a kid. But then on top of that, what they would always do is threaten us. Like, and they would always say that. And I don't hear that as often anymore. But then again, I got a lot of kids in my life. So that was something that reminded me of. And I don't know, it did work on a lot of kids, because then you would overstuff yourself. Like, you're so full, but you're so scared. And you would just literally keep on eating everything you have on your table. So, not the best relationship with food.
And bouncing off of that too, putting food in a category of being bad. I was like raised in a really strict household too, where I wasn't giving sweets all the time. And because of that, like I remember vividly one moment where I was at a first cousin's birthday and we were eating cake, or they had just blown out the candles on the cake and they started cutting up cake. And me being like, I don't know, 6 or 7, I went to go sit by myself on the couch because I knew my parents weren't going to let me eat the cake. And so I grew up, at least like for the first 10 years, not really having a lot of sugar, because my parents thought for some reason that sugar would eventually lead to diabetes for some reason. And I know other people who've grown up like that, but it was extreme to the point where like I would have to sit around in a room watching other people eat cake in front of me and I couldn't have a piece. So it was like crazy. But that also led me, so similar to Emily's story, to eating whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. And so when I was really stressed out, when I was in college and working, 2 part-time jobs, I think it was 6 to 8 months, I would literally eat one cupcake a day. And that led me to having like a really severe sugar addiction and basically uncontrolled eating, because I was eating all the things that I wanted to in the past that my parents wouldn't let me. And now I understand that there is a lot of shame for wanting to eat sweets in my family, because one, we link that to, even why would you want to be doing that to yourself? Like, it's a bad thing, like it's going to cause you diabetes. And then 2, it's like you shouldn't be enjoying those foods, even if it's there, like you shouldn't even be eating it in moderation. So it's a very like extreme version of a parent wanting what's best for their kid.
Yeah, it just reminds me of those videos of like almond moms, if you guys have been seeing
Oh
those,
yeah.
Never seen that.
Yeah, so it's like basically like moms who like want only like whole or organic kind of foods in their pantries, and there's never any sweets. It's like alternatives to sweets, and like teaching their kids like, oh, you're hungry, just have like a couple of almonds. That's why they're called almond moms.
Yeah.
And like the best example is like Yolanda Hadid. She's the supermodel's mom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've seen that clip surface.
Yeah, and so like I didn't have an almond mom, but like all my aunts and like the people in my life were always like, are you sure you want to eat that? Like we should probably go to the gym. They would say that generally, like we should go to the gym and we should eat less. And they'd be looking at me while they say that. I'm like, I'm 10. Like, what do you want me to do? I've been chubby all my life and I'm like an active kid. And so, that's definitely how it was with us. Like the more affordable foods were foods that weren't healthy, and that was what was available. But then we were also taught like these things are not healthy for you. These are bad. And so it's like, well, what do I eat? I'm hungry, So
it's really confusing too as a kid.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I'm not supposed to eat this, but I want to. And it's like, it doesn't teach children moderation,
No.
So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Addressing our relationship with food growing up, and how we were taught if it was good food or bad food, how do you think that has seeped into your relationship with food now as an adult? How do you treat food now?
I also, like, this whole entire episode, the questions, I had a really hard time trying to figure out like my history, my past with it, because I've never fully thought about it from that perspective of how I was raised with it, how it's affecting me now. But I know that like through my high school years, I started associating it as a comfort item. And I'm not sure exactly how that came about. So if I was stressed, I would eat, if I was excited, I would eat. If I was uncomfortable, I would eat. So if you see me at a party munching down on things and I'm always eating, I'm probably very uncomfortable. But that wasn't the case growing up. Like, I don't think I really had a lot of issues with food. I wasn't someone who was difficult at eating. Sometimes you have kids who dislike textures and they won't eat certain things. They're picky eaters, but I was never a picky eater. I always had food at home, and aside from the, you put the whole, that wasn't so much something that was geared towards me per se, because I was always really good at finishing the food that I wanted. So I'm not exactly sure the correlation and how it went from that to where I am now. Like my current state with food is really unhealthy. I think it more so stemmed from when I was older, when I grew up and getting older and being faced with like correlating food with looks. That's where it became an unhealthy thing for me. That's where food became bad instead of just being like something you needed to be alive. So I'm not exactly sure. That's a hard question for me. Yeah.
No, food is definitely interesting because we all eat. We all want to enjoy yummy food, and how we are socialized growing up to look at food definitely affects how we treat it as an adult. And it is hard to like identify your patterns with food when you've kind of grown up with food all around you, but you're also told to associate it with like certain things. So I understand your like complication of like identifying your relationship with food. I Same here. Like I said, I grew up with like there are times having food and times not having food, and being told that I'm eating too much, but also not eating enough. And so my relationship now with food is a lot better. It was really bad at one point, especially when I started working as a teenager. I worked at McDonald's, so I could afford to like buy food, but I could also take home food from McDonald's. And so like growing up, we used to eat McDonald's a lot because my sisters worked there, and their managers would like let them bring home food to us. And so as kids, we would eat it. I was taught that it was a bad thing, and so I wouldn't eat McDonald's when I worked there. And then when I realized, I think I had just graduated high school, and I'm like, F this, I'm hungry. I'm going to buy whatever food I want because nobody can tell me what I can and cannot eat anymore. And so every night after work, I would like have like a McDonald's sandwich because like I would work like a 9-hour shift and I'd be hungry. And the easiest thing to get was just the food that was already in the kitchen. And so I had a really bad relationship with food. It was definitely something that I turned to for comfort when I was stressed. I would like buy sweets that I couldn't buy when I was younger, or I would eat on food that, we didn't cook unless it was a special occasion. And now that I could cook and buy my own stuff, I would go and I would buy the ingredients to cook it and I would eat it, And so it definitely was a comfort food. It's not something that I see as just sustaining you in the moment. I love food. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I love food. I love cooking. But I do it now in moderation. And I know growing up, and I am guilty of this, and I've learned to be better about it, is, as a kid, I was watching other kids, and, my niece is only 8 years younger than I. And so I would find myself like saying, like, you need to eat all your food, even if they were telling me they were full. And now as an adult, obviously I was like 12, 13 when I was watching these kids. And so I'm telling them what I heard growing up is you need to eat all your food because there are people starving. And you're not going to eat this bag of chips because it's bad for you. And I remember saying those things to them. And now as an adult with my younger nieces and nephews who are, 8, 9, 10, I tell them just eat. If you're full, then you're full. If you want to eat some chips, you can eat some chips. Eat it in moderation. I tell them, this is how much they say is good for you, but if you want to eat more, go ahead. Like, I'm not going to stop you because, again, that can lead to worse food habits growing up. And so that's how it was for me growing up. I used to also hoard food. Like, if there was a sale going on, I would, like, buy those things and put it in my freezer because that's what my mom does. And my parents do is, just how they grew up is food was a scarcity for them. And so they hoarded food. And so now my mom has a freezer at each of my sister's houses with some food. And, a part of that is because they're concerned that, there's not going to be enough. And so I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. If you look in my fridge and freezer now, it's pretty empty. And some days I look at that and I'm like, that's sad. My fridge is empty. But I also know that I'm not wasting food and that I'm not keeping food that I know I'm not going to eat. So, yeah.
I'm the same with my siblings. Like, I don't force them to eat, but it's hard because they're picky eaters too. So I'm in the same boat. You shouldn't be forcing kids to eat, ignoring their body cues.
Yeah, I know there are times where I'm like, I know my nephew is so funny. He hadn't eaten all day, and we would be like, you need to come eat because you have not eaten all day. This is different from forcing you to eat because we just want you to eat. It's literally been 12 hours and you have not eaten. You're gonna eat something. And so he'd be like, but I'm not hungry. Well, guess what? We know at 10 p.m. when we tell you to go to bed, you're going to be hungry. And so, obviously when it's things like that where they're ignoring their hunger cues and you're trying to teach them, okay, just eat something, that's fine. But yeah, like Ariel said, not forcing them to eat, especially when they know that they're full. Don't force them to do it.
I think that's a really interesting perspective because I have not been around kids for a long time. I've been an only child, no additional like babysitting or nothing. And so most recently, I've been living with my mom, helping take care of, my new baby brother. And I'm around a lot of they're baby cousins. So the youngest she just turned 1 actually, and she's a great eater. She will eat anything that's in front of her, which is it's great. But then her older sister, I think she's like at least 6 or 7, no, somewhere in there. But she is also a really picky eater, and this perspective, to also ask you guys, is more like your nephew, where she will not eat. She dislikes eating. And she will go throughout the whole day without eating if she could. Like it's a chore and it's a whole task for her. And I understand the not forcing kids to eat beyond their like bodily cues, because I don't think that's right for them either. But then in this case, like she just will not eat, and then sometimes she'll be like, I don't want to eat, and then be like, can I have a bag of chips? Like that's all she wants for the day. And it's like, okay, well that's not gonna be good for you. So conversations that I've never really thought of is having those talks with your kids or younger individuals, letting them know moderation, because that's not something that I was taught growing up. It was just either you're eating too much or you're eating too little based on how you looked. And having to see this, I've never like realized how difficult it could be for a child to eat their food. So if that was the case, like how would you go about it? I mean, I know, Emily, you kind of answer that with your nephew, but it's like you don't want to force them either, but you don't want them to have full authority over choosing, I'm just going to have a bag of chips for the day because that's all I want to eat. Like you still got to eat something nutritional and have that in your body too. So basically she's not gained weight since her last doctor's checkup a year ago. She's remained stagnant. And so it's like a cause for concern, of course. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Just from like an early childhood background, I think a lot of what we teach like daycare workers or childcare workers and just like parents in general is like, if your kid is going through a whole day not wanting to eat, but they want a bag of chips, is like negotiate with them. Like, okay, you want a bag of chips. How about we also eat this with it, right? Like, how about you take a bite of this food or, eat 2 carrots and then you can also have some chips, right? Negotiating with them to teach them, like, understand, like helping kids understand what moderation is in the way that we can. So like, okay, you haven't eaten since, breakfast this morning and now it's dinner and you only want a bag of chips. How about we eat, and like, let's say you like roasted some veggies. How about we eat like a couple bites of the roasted veggies, just a couple, and then you can also have a bag of chips, right? Because also part of it is like, some kids also like snack throughout the day. And so like that sustains them. And like they had an apple at lunch instead of actual lunch. And then an hour after lunch, they also had some grapes, or they had like, what are those little things? Those fruit snacks. There we go. And like they had fruit snacks, and like sometimes kids are snackers. And so when it comes to an actual meal, they don't want to eat. And so it's also like making sure, okay, are they at least snacking? Are they at least drinking water throughout the day and staying hydrated? And then when it comes to dinner time and they're like, I don't want to eat, I just want a bag of chips. How can you negotiate like a balance between the two, and like giving the child autonomy at the same time as you also guiding them? And so they're also choosing. I mean, you're not giving them any other choices other than eat this or eat this. It's not eat this or eat nothing. So like you're giving them the autonomy to choose between the two options of eating healthy and unhealthy foods or eating just a bag of chips. And then that teaches a child that they also have a choice in the food that they eat growing up too. And so, like, I don't know about the whole weight thing. A doctor can talk about that. But I know, like, like Ellie for a long time, she was really small for a long time, but she ate. That girl could eat twice her brother's food, you know? But she wasn't really gaining a lot of weight. And, like, sometimes that's just how a child's body is built. So that's my suggestion. That's how we've done it before with our kids. But
I've already had this experience.
yeah.
So my baby sister who's 5, she doesn't like eggs. And so so that was one of the things that like was a big challenge in the family, but now it's not because my parents have sort of figured out how to work around it. And one of the things watching my parents work through it really taught me is that kids are allowed to have preferences. You know, it's not a bad thing that kids don't like certain things. And I feel like for a lot of parents out there, they can be like, oh, you know, like they want to try to force it on their child. But that's honestly not the way to go. And that's probably going to hurt that relationship with that food even more. So how my parents have done it is they've tried to give her eggs in different variations. So a fried egg on top of rice, egg scrambled with eggs, or egg scrambled with rice. Just different ways of showing it to her that it's not just one way that this food comes, but you should try it in a lot of different ways. And 2 weekends ago, the kids were over at my house, and I forgot a food shop, and the only thing left was eggs. So I was like, oh my God, great. Like, we're going to have to go through this. And so what ended up happening is I ended up just making eggs with rice and cilantro and then, like, seasoning it really nicely. And I put it on the table in front of her, and I was like, you have to take one bite, and that's all you need to take. That's all you need to take. And even if you don't like it, that's okay. You can give it to one of us to eat, but just try it. And so she took the smallest bite. Like, it was a piece of rice with the tiniest piece of egg ever. And she was like chewing on it so slowly, like it was the most disgusting thing in the world. And she's just like, it scratches my throat going down. It's disgusting. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And so we ended up giving someone else her eggs and rice because she wouldn't want to eat it. And instead, I was like, okay, well, it's okay that you ate a piece, but I'll just make you like chicken noodle soup now. So I just made her some chicken noodle soup and she ate that. So I really do feel like, back to the autonomy part, it really is like giving your child what they like, you know, whether they don't like peas, whether they don't like chicken noodle soup or eggs. Like, it's okay to have preferences. And as adults, we have preferences too. And I don't think we realize that. But like, I don't like eating broccoli steamed like that, but I like in other forms, and that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's giving your child the choice, or your nieces or nephews, just giving them the choice to choose, but also like teaching them like, try it, or, you know, try it and see if you like it, but also like, these things are good for you too, so just have a bite, right?
Yeah.
And knowing that, yeah, in the moment you're just eating it to sustain yourself, but you can also have what you like, but you know, in the moment, eat a little bit.
Well, and I feel like kids too, overall, they don't know why they're eating it. So I've taken it one step further sometimes, where I'll explain to her, the chicken is good for you and eggs are good for you because it's full of protein. You're not eating it just because it's there. You're eating it because it's going to sustain your body, and it's actually going to help you grow. And for kids, like, it finally, you can see that light bulb go off in their head when they're like, oh, like, I'm not just eating food because I want to eat it. It's to actually help me grow, and it's good for my body. And
my stomach's growling. Sorry.
You hungry, Emily?
that's perfect.
Keep going.
But yeah, I think that's one of the things that I've learned too, especially from watching my parents, is you really do have to explain to kids, like, from A to Z, like, why are you eating this and why it could potentially help them in the long run.
I really like both those perspectives because when I was there, and there was this one night, and my mom and I were babysitting, and she's not a bad kid. She's super smart. And that's the thing, is a lot of times I feel that growing up, the kid who didn't eat was like quickly associated as being a bad kid. But it's like, food is really difficult for certain individuals, and it's hard for me to relate because I've never really had that as a kid growing up. And she also, funnily enough, something about eggs, okay?
Yeah, it's just a texture, I think. Yeah.
Her mom is also really good at, like, negotiating with her, talking with her, like, you know, you just have to eat a little bit. Why don't you try it? And I would hear these cues. I'm like, okay, let me take note, because I feel like if I were to still be there for my baby brother, and just the way I grew up and the things I heard, as you said, Emily, where it's like, I feel like that's something I would say to my baby brother, but I really don't want to have that unhealthy interaction with him growing up and how he views food. But I don't feel that I have the right tools or resources to go about it. So I really like that we're having this conversation and you both have that experience to share. Like, I've never thought about the explaining to them, because growing up, all you hear is, no, no, don't go to Lana, but it's like how? And then you go about eating a lot of it, and then you get big, and then they don't like you big. And it's like, so what exactly do you want me to do with this? Because you're told it's time to eat, you eat. And you've never really thought about why, you know? And you're right. I think I remember one of the moments where with my baby cousin, her mom was trying to tell her, like, you have to eat because these are the reasons why. And so you have to eat at least a little bit, you know, why don't we try to do at least 1 or 2 bites? Is that okay? And then she'll go about eating it. But the one night I was babysitting, I was like, you just got to eat. I don't know, but you have to eat. I eat, you eat. And it was so bad. My mom was like, I was like, Mom, y'all used to give me the sock, man.
Yeah.
I'm trying really hard here. I was so bad. And I'm like, okay, I need to be better at this. Like, I need to learn how to talk with kids, not an adult or someone who I like, or in the way that I used to be talked to. Because I know I didn't like it. So that was rough. Babysitting hard.
Yeah, no, babysitting and just being with kids for an extended amount of time definitely makes you reflect on how you were taught growing up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it definitely makes you confront your demons, for sure. But
Well, and it's interesting too, because I was talking to my boyfriend and I was telling him about the egg situation too. And he came from a place of scarcity where he didn't grow up with food all the time in his family. And so because of that, when I told him, you know, my sister doesn't like eggs, he was like, what? Just force her to eat it, you know? Like, just do it and, like, she'll thank you later. But that's the thing, is that because of the situation and the way he grew up, you know, he didn't really get a choice in thinking about what foods to eat because he just ate what was put on the table. So I feel like that in itself, it's really interesting to see because he's seen me like maneuver around that situation, and now he understands that, you know, kids have preferences too, and so do I, and it's okay. So I just calling that out there too, that people who come from like a scarcity mindset around food, like, it's okay to be able to pick and choose and let your children do the exact same.
yeah, for sure. And that's a really great segue to our next question, which is how do we think Hmong people or the Hmong community, like how they treat food and how they even now teach their children to have a relationship with food? Because I'm pretty sure we can all relate growing up, but like a lot of our parents grew up with that scarcity mindset of and so I know that's how I grew up. I know, like I mentioned earlier, my mom like collects food because she doesn't want to have that issue of not having food. And so how do you think like your elders or just the Hmong community in general treats their relationship with food and how they're teaching their kids to treat food?
I, again, didn't really come up with that upbringing of food was scarce. And so I can't quite relate to that. It for me was more the association of your looks with food. So I think that most definitely affected the way that I grew up viewing what I had in front of me, what I could and could not eat, or how much I could and could not eat. Not so much what I was eating. Like, I like Ariel's perspective of teaching children, this is good for you because this is protein, you know? I didn't really even learn about that until much, much later in life, like thinking about the things I'm putting into my body. And I don't know. I think that we can do better at separating that factor, like understanding food is nutrition. Food is something that helps to sustain your body, and not so much associating with you're big, stop eating so much, you're smaller, so eat more. Because that's not going to really resolve the problem. Like someone who's growing older, hormones might take effect. And I just don't feel that we have those conversations or that we're conscious of that enough in the community.
I actually wanted to backtrack because I didn't get to share my part about the how it seeped into a relationship with food as now as an adult. But that's a perfect segue too, because a big portion of how I grew up was because I wanted to stay thin. And so because I had eaten so much sugar, I started gaining weight. And to try to combat that weight gain, I tried to do intermittent fasting. So I did intermittent fasting for about 3 years. And because of that, I would a lot of times, like 99% of the time, skip out on breakfast. And Emily's nodding her head for those of you who can't see it. But that was for me one of the biggest things that I remember is like, oh, I can't eat breakfast because, you know, like, one, I don't need it, and two, I don't have time. Because during that time, I was just so busy with like college and a lot of other things and family stuff. And so intermittent fasting for me was, I think, one of the first hills that I had to overcome, is really learning that my body does need food to operate correctly, and it needs this food to help my hormones function, a lot of other things function, and it's something that I actually need and that I don't need to just, you know, not pay attention to. And it got to a point where I was like, oh, I just don't need to eat it because I'm so busy. And like, it wasn't a necessity anymore. It was more of just a, I don't, you know, it wasn't where I didn't think it was a necessity. It was just I ignored my cues to the point where I had like extreme brain fog. I had a really hard time concentrating. My stomach would growl, and I would just, again, I would ignore my body's cues, because that's how I grew up, is you just ignore it and you move on, you know, whether you're hungry or whether you're like stuffed and almost to a food coma, you just ignore it and you move on. So that for me was one of the big things where I was really like, you know, I really do need to start listening to my body, because if I don't, I end up overeating. I end up feeling like shit every single day. Sorry, this isn't supposed to be R-rated. Because I want people to. Was R-rated because of me. So. I want you to be able to listen to this with your kids in the car or something. Sorry. But yeah, so I slowly began to listen to my body's cues. So that looked like for me eating a snack when I was hungry and stop eating when I was full. And then through that journey too, over the past couple of years, I've learned that no foods are off limits. So I can have a bag of chips, probably just not with every meal, but I can have a bag of chips every day if I wanted to. And then I think along with this, I grew up in a family where, you know, we like to be really playful with each other. I remember like even when I gained a little weight, people would touch my tummy, or like they'd touch my, double chin. And I'd be like, what the heck?
Oh, hell no.
And so, yeah. But this was like close family though. It's not like, you know, weird or anything.
That's still no excuse.
It's still so disrespectful though.
Yeah. And so I always felt the need throughout life to justify my food choices. And so because of that, you know, you grow up in a really semi-toxic family where it's like, oh, why are you eating so many egg rolls? Because I'm hungry. Oh, well, are you that hungry though? So it's almost like they're instilling this distrust in you. And yeah, just really over the last couple of years, I've stopped feeling the need to justify my food portions and my food choices. And then another big thing is I also understood that I'm not defined by the foods I eat either, because I feel like we do put a lot of power in the food that we put inside of our bodies and the food we decide to buy, right? Like a lot of people I know, especially some of my girlfriends, they'll feel guilty if they want to buy a box of Twinkies. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, if you buy 20, like, that's probably a addiction issue. You got to look at that. But one box is not going to kill you. And I know it's horrible to say, but as long as you eat things in moderation and you don't overdo it, there really is little to no harm if it's paired with other healthy things like exercise, sleep, etc.
Yeah, I actually really love that, Ariel, because food and my relationship with it is an ongoing battle. And there are a lot of things that I had to learn along the way. I did the intermittent fasting, and that wasn't even that long ago, because post my divorce, stress, a variety of factors, again, food is a comfort thing for me. And so I ate a lot and I gained a lot of weight. And to combat all of that, I just decided I was going to stop eating. Like, it was the way to go. And there are just so many other ways you can go about losing weight in a healthy manner, because in doing that and not eating, like for me personally, totally ruin your cycle and the way your body processes food, and it makes it so much worse than making it better. And I believe for myself, instead of like making me able to lose weight in a healthy manner, now I have to reset everything. Because then when I do eat, I believe my body is like in such a shock where it's like, oh my God, we never get food. So hold on to this tightly. You know, you don't know when you're going to get your next meal. And I think that, again, has really ruined my relationship with food and trying to rebuild that. I'm also the kind of girl who feels guilty when I eat a bag of chips or when I buy. So in my house, I think, Emily, you've probably heard me talk about this before. Like when I was in my apartment, I would not buy any kind of snacks. And that was more so for me to be able to build discipline, because moderation, I think, comes with the ability to discipline yourself and saying like, I'm going to stop here. I binge eat. I'm a binge eater.
Oh, I am too.
It's, for me, it's so bad. Like, it's so bad. I can go on a bag of family size chips all by myself in one sitting. And by the time, and it's not even conscious, I will sit there and just munch. I love the feeling of just eating. I love the taste of food. I'm not even sorry about that.
I get it though. Yeah.
It's just like the fact that it's not necessary for my body. And so in order to not have that become an issue, I just don't buy it. And I've been trying to focus on the smaller things, like let's take small steps. And so now I've realized I've become a lot better. I think taking that entire break from having all those snacks easily accessible to me has made it so that I'm more conscious of how much I don't actually need it all the time. And it's not if I want to eat, I can just easily grab it. Now I have to actually go make something, because sometimes I'll utilize snacks as a replacement for food because it's easier for me to munch down. And I know more recently, like at my mom's, she got snacks, she's got ice cream, she's got everything. And I'm a lot better at just saying like, okay, well, I already had my ice cream for the day. I don't need to have 5 in one sitting. It's not absolutely necessary. I'm just hungry. Let me actually make myself something to eat. So I would say that my relationship with food's gotten a lot better, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
I'm recovering too. And I really like that you said that, because that brings to my mind, like, it's funny because I don't think we realize that when we give ourselves something every single day, we eventually get tired of it. And that was me having a cupcake every single day for like 6-8 months. Is I really did get tired of it. And I think that's the funny thing too, is I didn't want to gain weight, but I ended up gaining weight anyway. And I've realized over the past 5 years too that when I stopped intermittent fasting, when I started eating 3 meals a day, when I got tired of giving myself all the sweets and things, I ended up gaining a little bit more weight than I wanted to. But at the end of the day, what matters is that I'm currently working on losing that weight in a healthier way and putting it into a healthier perspective of what I've learned over the past couple of years.
I would also binge eat. The past couple of years, I have been slowly losing weight because I've really fixed my relationship with food. And this is going to be another episode where we talk about like how binge eating and just our relationship, or like our hormones and how food affects that. Obviously, that's another episode, but along the same lines as Ariel, I found that I couldn't lose weight even by remaining active and eating healthy, because I have really high levels of cortisol. And that's the stress hormone. And when your body is constantly in stress and it's constantly sending that signal, even, no matter how much you work out, no matter how much you eat, if you're not addressing that issue, it's not going to fix anything. And so, I was along the same lines of, I would buy foods that I like and I would feel guilty about it. And then I wouldn't eat it. And then I would binge eat it. Because I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to reward myself because I didn't eat any sweets this week. And then I would binge eat it at the end of the week. It's kind of funny, though, that you're mentioning that, because I have no snacks in my house right now. And that's not on purpose. I found that I'm not a snacker. I like my meals. And even if I have snacks available, I do have snacks available actually. Like I had this bag of caramel popcorn in my home and I eat like 2 pieces and I'm like, I'm good. I don't want it. But that's because I also know I'm not a sweet tooth person, right? I'm the type of person who I just want one bite of something sweet and then I'm done. And that's satisfactory for me. I'm a meal person. I need to have my meals, and that's where I would binge eat. Like yesterday, my sister made curry, and typically because I wouldn't have eaten something that rich, I would be like, this is my time. I just spent this past week working out. I didn't eat anything fatty or like rich. So I'm going to eat 3 bowls of this curry because I want to, and it's really good. And then I would feel like an overstuffed turkey afterwards. And yesterday I just had 1 tiny bowl because I'm like, I'm full after eating this tiny bowl. I had enough curry. It's satisfactory. And so really mending and building that relationship with food and understanding that like you can still enjoy what you want to enjoy and you don't have to overindulge in it because you most likely have another chance to be able to enjoy that food again. So I don't feel guilty now when I buy snacks, and I don't feel guilty when I want to eat the food that I like because I've worked hard and long enough to mend that relationship with food through therapy and just through, understanding that what my body needs right now is just what it needs right now. And so like and I've told this to Dochi before where I'm like, if my body is telling me, okay, I really need just like red meat right now, I'll go to the store and I'll buy like 1 steak and I'll cook it and I'll eat it. But then I would be fine for the next like month and a half. I don't need like another steak or like red meat. And so that's my relationship with food. Growing up with people all around me, like our elders, they would be like, that's what makes you healthy. And so like, I feel like our community has a really good handle on like, they know what foods are healthy. Because, lamu, what is it? I don't know what the Hmong word for it, but they go foraging, right? And so, like, they know, like, this kind of wild plant is good to eat. And so they'll eat that and they'll have that at dinner. But it's that moderation part, right? Because Hmong people, we like to cook. When we go to family outings, we make a shit ton of food. Sorry, I was cursing too. We make a whole ton of food.
Cover your children's ears.
We're trying.
But, like, you see tables and trays upon food. And so we're taught from a very young age, like in our own community, that like having a lot of food is the language of love too. Right? We use it, which is interesting. We use it as a power tool to like teach our kids not to be like fat, but then we also constantly are cooking and showing that food is the language of love. And so we're going to make a ton of food. We're going to pack it for people to go, and you guys have to eat it. And so I think Hmong people have an interesting relationship with food where we know what's healthy. We know that we, want to teach people how to eat in moderation. But then on the flip side, we also go, but if you eat too much or too little, you're too fat or too skinny. And so I think our generation now understands, like, we're not going to be almond moms, obviously, but we're also not going to be the parents that just let our kids eat whatever they want to eat. I think we have a really good understanding and grasp of like, your mom hong nana, like, if you want to eat that, that's fine. It's healthy. It's boiled. You can eat that. It's not considered unhealthy just because you got pork skin on there. Because I used to think that was unhealthy growing up. And so I would only eat the zhou with rice.
Out.
And now I'm like, I want the pork and the zhou with it. And so we, I think Hmong people have a really interesting relationship with food, and we're getting better at not teaching our kids that like, this is all bad and this is all good. So, yeah.
I agree with that because that reminds me of like when my grandma cooks food and then I take me and my boyfriend, and because, he's the guest for now. He's a guest for now. She'll be like, oh, nanzi, even when he's finished, she's like, no, I'm full. She'll still put food on his plate. And so he, like, since he's not Hmong, he was like, why does your grandma do that, Like, I'm full. And that's something that I had to explain to him is she's doing it because she loves you and because she wants you to eat more just in case you're lying and you're shy. But yeah, when you said that brought up that memory. But I agree with both of you. I feel like it's something that's still being worked on to this day. And because my parents are still so young, like I'm sort of thankful I grew up with sort of that experience of how they navigated it. But I know other people who have, either older parents or just generally out in the community, they're not very open to it. And I think one of the turning points for our family is, like, I recently went gluten-free and dairy-free. And so because of that, there are certain things that I just can't eat. And it's obviously for health reasons because I have a leaky gut and other stuff. But it was a real challenge for my grandma to understand that, like, sometimes I just cannot literally eat some foods, and that's okay. And it's not going to be like this for the rest of my lifetime, but it's something that I'm working on to heal myself from the inside out. So I think even just the concept of that, of like, oh, my granddaughter can't eat something because she's, you know, not willingly choosing to, but it's because she's trying to heal herself. That in itself was like a powerful moment for my grandma, where she was like, oh, you know, now I have to cook in a way that can still taste good, but also honor my granddaughter's choices.
Yeah, my mom is the same way, because my sister can't eat dairy because her son has a dairy allergy or lactose allergy. And so we have to be really careful about how we cook now. And same for me. I'm also going dairy free and gluten free because of my PCOS, but also I just like, there's something going on with my gut too. And so I've also gone gluten dairy free. And so a lot of like the food items that I'm eating are that way. And so my family is definitely, now that a child that is not me is, you know, they can't eat something with dairy in it, people are definitely more conscious about that. Even my mom, she's like, yeah, you know, this chicken bouillon that I used, it doesn't have dairy, so I'm going to use it to cook with.
Yeah.
You know, so it definitely does help when their grandchild
Oh, yeah.
needs something. So the power of grandchildren is true.
Yeah.
A few things on that. Backtracking to when you're talking about it is a love language, right? And when, because I mean, I know when but one of the things I learned is because you know you have your one plate and then in your head you're like, I should have gotten more. Damn.
See, yeah.
But you don't want to be like, I'm gonna get myself. You know, you gotta build yourself up to it. At least that's what I felt like. But one thing I heard is, if you shy, you die.
That's true.
I love that.
And so I was like, you know, that's a concept that I've been living with, and because you think about. I want to say when you go out to no mall, Hmong people's houses, they'll tell you, oh, no tia, no tia, na. And they've gotten a lot. I feel generally better at not putting food onto your plates. But there's still this, like, individuals being hesitant, you know, like tia na mona. And then nobody wants to go in line. I'm like, I'm not shy because I'm not dying. Like, I can start the line. I can go around and get my food first. Mm-hmm. So that's something I've gotten a lot better at. But that's something that I've also seen with the Hmong community. And then the second point I really wanted to make was, just based on what you guys are saying, it made me feel that a lot of the way that Hmong people associate what's healthy and is not is very visual. Because, even though you're eating, you know, I mean, fatty, it's not good that you eat so much of it, but like anything else in moderation. And I know I've heard a lot of elders say like, oh, but they don't know what mayo is, and be like putting a crap ton of mayo in like their salad mixes. And it's like, you know, that's like straight up fat, right? Mm-hmm. But because they don't see the way that they would when, you know, lokijo or something, they would think that that is healthier than this because everything's very visual. Mm-hmm. Until they get like, you know, those little babies that they love and realize, oh, there's a lot more to food than just what I'm seeing, and actually having to work around that. But when it comes to us, they're like, go, you know, as if like your medical professionals don't know anything, they know better because they're like, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
My bad.
The amount of times I've heard that said by an elder, oh my gosh, it's funny. Yeah, I also would like to add to that, because you triggered something in me, is, you know, for our Hmong people, stop commenting on other people's eating. Because growing up, I would hear that all the time, is just like, nanzina, because ko yotona. But then for me, it would be the complete opposite. It would be like, ko no eat, just ipromosana. You know, and like, oh, you don't need more. And it's like, stop commenting on people's eating. Mm-hmm. And not just Hmong people, anyone, right? Like, mind your own business. It's essentially what it is. Like, you don't want people in your business, so why are you in others? You're just gonna come up with your nose full of shit. So
another swear word, sorry kids.
Trigger warning at the very beginning, make sure you have earplugs ready for your kids.
Yeah.
This wraps up our episode for talking about our relationship with food and how we can feel the community can do better with their relationship with food. If you liked what we talked about today, how about you comment what your relationship was like with food, and we will We'll do our best to interact with you. Thanks for joining us today. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow.